44 and I was born. So I was in that situation where I had older parents. And because I had older, so because they were older, my dad especially, definitely my dad, being a minister as well, they were quite, not Victorian, but they were very, they were old, almost like old British.
Yeah.
It's like that weird kind of, they still looked at this as the mother country.
Yeah.
They still had that kind of...
The respectability.
The respectability about it,
Yes.
which I think my generation, our generation, I'm in my 50s, but our generation was probably the generation that, from the 70s, 80s, as youngsters, and I was a teenager in the 80s, were the ones that started to rile up against it.
Yeah.
Because we were like, what? We were kind of seeing this weird...
See, to be honest, because I'm older than you, so I'm born in 1960, so mid-70s, I remember my older brother, who's 4 years older, and I remember my dad came back from somewhere and said, I just seen your brother Peter, Donald, and he was at something, and he was with a crowd of young men, and they were saying, nothing go so, nothing go so, nothing go so. And we said, oh, look, no, the young man had make noise for. But at 16 he left home because it was hard because he was one of those who came over here, born in Jamaica, came here, and actually it was hard for that generation. We talked about it many, many times.
See, that I can't imagine.
Yeah.
That I can't imagine.
Are we...
Yes, we're ready.
All right.
Yeah, we're ready.
We are here
We've
again.
done it. We've talked about it.
I know. I've been listening. Let me tell you, I've been.
We'll do it all again. We'll do it all again. We'll just go
it again.
I'm thinking, missing out on the conversation.
We'll start it all again.
Yeah, I was so excited about when you said a couple of weeks ago we had Steve Edwards coming on to the podcast there. Really excited about it because one of the things I said to you as we were sitting down, Steve, was, when are you playing again? I thought I might get some insider information on that, but for me, it's a real pleasure to have you here because it's an opportunity to sit down and talk with you, and I've passed you by many times over the years there, but never really had the opportunity to, as we're joking, I sit down and reason with you.
See?
reason
What did Luther say? Give me the reason.
The great Luther.
The great Luther.
This
The great
documentary.
Luther.
Oh wow, it's a beautiful.
Wow.
Do you know, it's like I was
Luther
looking at it.
Vandross.
I haven't
You haven't seen it
but
yet?
I would love to see it. Yeah.
Longy should see it, man.
Yes.
It's because we all know Luther and we think we know who he was, and but then you go behind the scenes of how he began and what he actually did.
Yeah, and what he had to contend with there,
All
the
that.
music industry, with his own sort of his own sexuality
Of course.
in a world which wants him to be presented in one way.
In one way.
Yeah. From all quarters there, and and even that issue there about his weight, how much?
Yeah,
Which I know is weird, isn't it?
Jeez.
Yeah, because I know there's this conversation that many of us usually have, like, oh yeah, Big Luther was. You remember Big Luther?
Yeah.
We preferred Big Luther, because he was jolly, and then
When he slimmed right down, didn't he? And then
he became
kind of wasn't quite the same, wasn't
he? Was
it?
never the
Like,
same. Yeah, that
at
least that's the kind of thing that we usually talk about.
But they're pressures, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're pressures. The outside world give you pressures. And we all get these outside pressures, don't we? That we've had to live through. No matter what demographic that you're from. Yeah. Culture or whatever, culturally or anything like that. We're all subject to these pressures from outside forces.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because the weird thing is, like, it's only today that I found out that you are a preacher's kid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I was talking to Tracy at the office, who actually says, I'm a big fan. She says she's a big fan. Tracy at the office. So that basically is for her.
That was a shout out for Tracy.
Yeah, but Tracy at the office. I don't know.
Tracy, thank you.
I don't even know what benefits that will get me.
You can have one of these badges. One of these badges. You can have
one of the badges.
Yeah, the Papa Head badge. That's my daughter did this actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, that is awesome.
That's my logo. That's the Papa Head. You see on the back there?
Yes.
Papa Head. Yeah, it says Papa Head there.
Yeah, because it's a recent thing. Because I only started noticing it on social media of recent. Because one of the things that I'm like, I wonder who is the publicist for Steve Edwards, considering that you are a big deal, in the music industry, so to speak.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But it's like, I'm thinking, I would like to be part of his marketing team.
I'd love to have a marketing. You can start it if you want.
You are the marketing
You're
team.
hired. You're hired. Yeah.
So I mean, we don't really want to kind of get into that thing and say introduce yourself,
No.
because you know what I'm saying. But I think we could start from young Steve. Where did you grow up?
Okay.
And considering also that you are a preacher's kid, you know,
Yeah.
and what was allowed for you, for young Steve?
Wow, young Steve. So I was born in a small town called Worksop, which is not far from Sheffield, the mining town. And it was tough. It was a tough upbringing, as you can imagine. A small satellite town, which was obviously, predominantly, white English.
So a small black community, very small.
But inside it, there was a small black community in there.
Yeah.
So, I was brought up there through the 70s and 80s. It was. It was I loved Worksop. Don't get me wrong.
But you learned to fight.
Yeah, I had to learn to look after myself.
You had to look after
Well,
yourself.
my brother. So my next brother up, Dave. He was always like. He was always a bit rough and tough, and he was like Big Eddie. They used to call him. That was his nickname, Dave Edwards, Big Eddie. Great at football. He was like the jock. Great at football, rugby, sprinting, cricket, everything. He could do everything, even fishing. He used to like to fish. Our Dave, bless him. I could never get into fishing. And then my mum, Valda, she was a nurse, and my dad was a coal miner, but he was a preacher as well.
Okay.
He was an ordained minister, and they came to England. Ooh, blimey! Late 50s. About 58, 57, 58. I think my dad came first. And he met my mum here, in England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And my mum came about 58, 59. And my dad's story, wow. So my dad was born in St. Anne's, Brownstown, in Jamaica, in 1916.
Wow, it's a good age.
1916. Like I say, he was 51 or something when I was born. So I had older parents. My mum was 44, and he travelled to America. He studied theology.
Oh, okay.
And he travelled to America in the 40s, early 40s, and he went all around sort of, north and a bit on the sort of below the Mason-Dixon line. So he was in the south a little bit. So you can imagine in the 40s and early 50s,
Yes.
what he saw, what he had to contend with, in America back in those days.
Yeah.
But it was growing. It was like a lay preacher. He was preaching, going around, and he's told me a bit about his life. Then I remember one story he told me about was he'd been on one of those Greyhound buses.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd been on it for about 3 hours because he was doing this big journey. I think he was going to Pittsburgh or somewhere. And it made a stop somewhere. And this white woman came on and told him to get up and get to the back of the bus so she could sit down because he was near the front. Because obviously back in those days you had to sit, it was the segregation thing. And he was getting up, and the bus driver said, "Hey, you sit down," and told this woman off. Said he's been on this bus for, 3.5, 4 hours. He's not going anywhere. And he made her sit somewhere else. And there was all this commotion, but They were like, no, you go and sit, you leave him alone, he's all right, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember he told me that when I was younger, when I was maybe 10, 11. And I was like, wow. That's...
But you know,
That's
those
amazing.
stories, though, I mean, my dad went to the States in 1944 as a part of the war effort. So there's a whole generation of Caribbean men who went to the States in that period. Some stayed in the States, some had to come back, and then they went on to the UK, etc. there. But they were the stories we grew up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gave me a sort of like feeling for the United States, which was quite a fearful feeling. So I've never been to the States. And when I went to college back in the late 70s, so I was at college, and some people I was at college with there, they were going off to the States. And I was quite envious because they could go. And I didn't feel I could go because I was scared to go, you know, late 70s, early 80s as a young black man to United States. I was just scared.
Scared of what?
I was scared of how I could manage being, you know, a young black man in an America which was just coming out of civil rights.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe, and I don't like that sense of being scared, but I think actually being scared is something which we were talking today, and you said fearful, and I think
fearful.
Ambinga said something like, well, let's
You
not
were
be
scared.
let's not be afraid to use the word. So I have to say at times I was scared. I was scared a lot of times when I was young, you know, and scared could be that actually you're not prepared to just have that confidence to do something else, to put yourself in a different setting, a different context, something which might give you a bit more opportunity. So we might just stay with what we've got.
Maybe it's like an apprehension as well.
Yeah.
You know, scared is quite an extreme of if that's what you say you were, then that's fair. I think for me anyway, growing up in the 70s, 80s, it was. You don't realise you're different until somebody told you.
Yeah.
Especially when you're young. You know, you just thought you were part of everything. You know. And then someone had, like a kid. That kids do. You know, they say, "Oh, does that skin come off? You know, does it come off in the wash?" You know, what do you mean? You know, of course it. What? Eh? Why? What? You know.
Yeah.
And your hair and.
So these were the
and all
things
that.
would have been things you got regularly.
Yeah.
Growing up in
Yeah, of
Worksop
course.
in the 70s. Of course, absolutely. I did in the 60s there. How do you think it fed into how did that affect you then?
Well, funnily enough, my wife just came across an old school report, literally the other day.
Yeah.
And we were cleaning garage out. She goes, "Oh, I found an old school report."
Yeah.
And I'm reading it, and my teacher, so I was like 11, I think, 10 or 11. It's a good report, actually.
Yeah.
Were you scared to go with a bad report?
But yeah. But my teacher, the teacher, Mr. Potts, Jack Potts, is not with us anymore, but he said in it somewhere that Stephen, what did he say now? That he can get quite sensitive about, you know, certain situations. And it kind of took me back. I've read this thing. And I know what he's meant because...
But he's not saying it out loud.
Is... Because I knew what I used to get sensitive about was like, obviously being called names and being, you know, singled out because I was the only black kid in the school, or you know, so I'd be getting teased and what have you. And so for me, what I kind of lash out.
Yes.
You know, I was one of those that kind of...
You throw hands.
Yeah. I was like, well,
you had to defend yourself.
my
What else
temper
can
was
you
like,
do?
You know,
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't one to like walk away, or you know, I was like, you know,
Yeah.
so I'd get into fights and what have you. But then I'd get blamed for it. Yeah, of course.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So then, how then did the music? At what age did that bug kind of catch on though?
I think I've always liked music. I know I've always liked it as a. I think it's an interesting thing, you know, when you're a child, and all these kind of influences of whether, you know, creative influences, I'd say, whether it's music or things you see on TV, sounds, smells, all the things that get your senses going, things you can see, hear, feel. I think music is as a kid, when I was probably around 6 or 7, is when I first realised I'd like a particular song listening to radio. Something would come on the radio, or I'd listen, on Ed Stewart, Stew Pot, Junior Choice.
You're going back now, aren't you?
And I'd be like, oh, I like that song.
Yeah.
That particular song. I don't know why I like it, but I like it. So when I became aware of music, I suppose, just as an entity in itself. And then going to church, I always like I say, I always went to church because my dad, my mum and my dad, but because my dad, being a minister. So in the black church, everybody was singing really loud and I mean, you talk about being scared. I thought what used to scare me and my brother Dave was being when we go to church or a convention.
Yeah.
And then and he's dressed in his finery, in his little suits, and it was always great for the food.
Yeah.
That was great for when you go to convention, you go to church. It's like the food after, like rice and peas and chicken, and you meet all your mates and stuff. But what used to scare us was when, especially like the older women, when they got taken by the Lord.
Yeah.
And we'd be sat quietly. And then next thing you know, chairs are going up. Tables are going. And,
I remember those.
Hallelujah. And we'd be like, what?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
What's that? And then my dad was praising him and can I get an amen? And so it was theatre. On a grand scale. And that was quite like, wow. So much so after a while, as we got older, my mum was like, well, I'm not sure I should be putting my kids through this. Yeah, there was like a bit of a split with my mum and dad in terms of religion. And my mum was like, she wanted to kind of conform a little bit more. Yeah. Spiritually. So she started to, she was very deeply religious, but she started to veer more towards like Church of England, with her friends and stuff, whereas my dad, I think because my dad was devout. Yeah. And he was like a, when I look back now, but he was an obsessive, classic evangelical. Yeah. Fire and brimstone, religious person. Yeah. That's what my dad was. So it was all about that, all about everything. When he'd be at home, he'd sit in the front room, the classic Jamaican thing, the front room where kids couldn't go in it. That was the special room, wasn't it? You still had your chairs and your sectors. Still had the plastic.
Still there's the plastic.
They're not unwrapped it.
Absolutely, and you're not sitting on it.
You're not sitting on it.
So don't even ask.
Don't even ask. So you couldn't go in the front room.
It's no task.
And he'd be there in his front. So he'd let me in sometimes when. So it'd have the bit. So there'd be like we'd go to church and he'd had like a little recorder, little reel-to-reel quarter-inch tape recorder. And he'd tape his sermons. So he was actually a bit ahead of his time, my dad, to be fair. So he'd record the sermons, and then he'd come back, and he'd play them at home. So he'd been there Sunday morning, well, all day Sunday, then he'd come back, and then he'd play them, sit in the front room and just sit there. And you'd hear, coming through walls. Yeah. And Jesus came to the top of the... And okay. I'm like, Dad, we've been already. What are you playing?
What was he playing it back for? To sort of like just hear himself?
He was playing.
Or was trying to sort of like. He was analysis.
Yes, it was that. It was analysis. It was a bit of both, like analysis and just feeling that thing again. Yes. But because he was like, because he was a theologian. Yeah. My dad, you know what I mean? It was like he knew.
And did he do theatre in? Was the drama in it as well?
There was, yeah.
So is that something in terms of like, he clearly had conviction, he had a dedication to his craft. Yeah. Is that something which you would say you've taken from him?
100%. And I wouldn't have, if you'd have told me while I was doing it, while I'd started getting into music, that's what I was doing, I'd have denied it. I said, no, I'm not, you know.
Mm.
But now,
Yeah.
well, not even now, should I say a few years ago, you know, after he died in 07. But I kind of realised that,
Yeah, your father's son.
the apple don't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
Definitely doesn't.
You know, and I kind of think, yeah, that's from me dad.
Yeah.
Mm.
That is from me dad. You know, because he could command the room.
Mm.
He could command the room, and he'd had all the ups and downs and the silences and the pauses and the speeding
The
up, you know, the whole,
repetition,
and
yes.
like those pastors
Yes,
did.
yes.
Like the,
And they do move you, don't they?
They move you.
They can move you where you feel a bit, oh.
yeah, that's all part of what they do, isn't it? You know, they draw you in and they try and give, you know, some kind of reason again to life that you can go on for your next week.
Yeah.
And live, you know, whatever what your week is going to bring you, and your work life and your family life and your relationships and stuff, until you have to go back the next Sunday to sort of, you know, disrobe again and just start all over again. And so I definitely feel that my dad, he's in me, you know, and I'm proud that he is. I'm proud that he is, because it's something. I think for a little while, I don't, you know, if I'm typical of like that kind of youth, that black youth from the, like I say, from the 80s, 70s, 80s more really. This, it's identity, isn't it? It's like knowing what your identity is.
Well, I think, you know, you're talking there about being a adolescent young man, that you're trying to carve a bit of a space for yourself.
Of course you are.
And part of that does mean that actually we've all got children. You can see it, can't you? They're trying to create a bit of space where they can see themselves. What you hope is that actually in that process that they're not throwing out or untethering too much. Because being, I think it's important that actually you are part of something. I
think that's where parenting skills, if you want to call them, come into their own then, don't they? Because it's. I always say, like, I've got 2 girls, and me and my wife, we always say that if we've done our job right, which I know we have done, but if you do your job right as a parent, then they're going to break your heart, because it means you've given them the tools to live independently of you.
Yeah.
And that's what your job's supposed to be as a parent. But it breaks your heart that they're going to say, thanks, Mum, thanks, Dad,
off and go and do their life,
you know. And it's like, oh, man, you know what I mean? But you've done your job properly.
But in that, doing that life there, so if you go back to the 80s, in Britain, you're in Worksop, and you know, you're wanting to start a life for yourself there, and yet this is 80s Britain, small town Britain, and there's lots of things which could actually just keep you where you are in terms of your head and your ambitions. I mean, how did you contend with that then? You know, to make that leap where you're saying, I'm interested in something, I'm going to pursue it.
Well, it was when I left school, I got an apprenticeship. I worked at a place called Babcock Power, which was like an engineering firm in a place called Retford.
Oh, Retford, yeah.
And I did that, did my sitting gills and all the rest, and I did that for about 4 years or so. But when I started to do that, I got into music, actual playing in music, when I was about 16. You know, so. You know, a lot of kids started playing, you know, if you were going to get into music, you might have said from like 14, 15. I was like 16. And I remember seeing, there was like local bands who were playing in the 80s, early 80s. And I went to see some friends playing in this like a club. And they were called Blue Emotion, they were called. They had synthesizers and everything. And so, wow, that's great, you know. And all these people were watching, all these kids were like, that's fantastic. And I thought, yeah, I could do that. I can sing a bit. I think I can sing a bit. I listened to the singer. I thought, he's all right, but I think I can sing a bit. And then they were auditioning for like a singer. I looked in the local paper, local band auditioning for a new singer. come down to this youth club, the Valley Youth Club, for auditions.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go down. So I walked about 2 miles to this place. And I started singing. I'll never forget it. I started singing. I can't remember what I sang. And these kids, the white kids, and they were like, oh my goodness, he's amazing. You're in, you know. And that's how I started. That's how I first started.
So you were a synth rocker, were you?
Was like, I was a synthesizer. Well, not so much I was a synthesizer, but that's what they were.
That was that sound that period, wasn't it?
You know, that was all that was there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It could have been anything.
Yeah.
You know, just happened to be them. You know, but it was something interesting. But also, what I realised, you know, you're talking about, you know, conform, because that's the thing. It's about conforming, isn't it? When you're a kid, more often than not, you don't want to be, you know, your parents will always say, keep your head down.
Yeah.
You know, don't, you know, you'll have enough attention on you because of who you are. So keep your head down best you can. Don't bring any extra attention to yourself. So that's what he kind of did. But there was always something in me that I was always curious about other things. What's that? What's over the other side of the wall? What is that? Why does this do this? What? And so I couldn't really keep my head down. And so doing something like that, auditioning for this band, no one in my circle was doing anything like that. I was into football and sports and, you know, all that stuff. So I did all that. Yeah. And you know, I was big into my first musical movement was two-tone. Two-tone music, like 79.
That's where you've got the specials and all
the
them
specials, you know, with Selector. And that was the first time I thought, wow, this is something that could be put. I get that. I understand that. I'd have been about 12, 30, something like that. But I got it, I understood it. And I liked you had this kind of Jamaican ska thing. But it was mixed with a bit of like English punk as well. And you know, you had the vibrance and the energy of like punk, but then you had like that kind of familiarity of blue beat and ska from the islands. So two-tone music, I got into that, and then I got into like hip hop when the hip hop thing came in the early 80s, and I was like, you know, so I was into break dancing and all that, and roller skating and all those things.
All those things.
All those things. And then eventually into because I always used to write. I always used to write little poems and little short stories. You know, I was always writing stuff. I read a lot, always reading books. I was a bit of a bookworm as a kid. Comics was a big thing for me.
Oh yeah,
massive comic fan.
Oh yes,
you know, like Marvel and all, and I collected them. And I used to collect, you know, Peanuts, Charlie Brown.
Oh yeah, Charlie Brown.
I used to get these little books from W.H. Smith's.
Yeah,
and I used to get them every time they come out. I had the whole collection of these.
Yeah.
So I was a bit of a nerd, really.
Well,
you know, which is
welcome to the club.
Hello, you know, and I was happy. You know, that's how I was into stuff like that, and Asterix the Gaul, and
Obelix,
yeah. So there's a little meeting of the minds here.
Yeah,
I read it as well.
I was a bookworm to boot. The comics, me also, I used to read westerns. So I had a large collection of that. So comics, westerns, Asterix and Obelix, and the variety of other. And I lived in a book.
I was the same. I was the same, and I used to like fantasy stuff as well. You know, Stephen Donaldson and Tolkien, and you know, and sci-fi, and anything that took my head away from like everyday life. Everyday life is pretty hard.
And if I'm going to jump ahead with that, is that something which you've continued with? That sort of that sort of like, you know, being lost in something sometimes.
Yes, I'm a dreamer.
Yeah,
my wife calls me a dreamer still.
Yes,
just, you know, she keeps me grounded.
Yeah,
you know, I love my wife very dearly. You know, we've been together. Yeah. Wow, 37 years, something like that. Loving my life. but I'm a dreamer.
Yeah. So you know, but that dreamer bit there, you know, because I mean, I love reading. I've always been an avid reader from the age of whenever. I've always read, and I always feel as if it's a bit like anchorage for me.
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm reading and I'm able to read, then I've got anchor. So if I'm going anywhere, I have to have a book with me.
Okay.
The idea of not having a book with me is like, well, I feel a bit naked.
Yeah.
And so it's like nearly, we talk often, Lungani and I talk about nearly like having a, you know, not hinterland, but other things.
Yes.
Yeah, other things which are part of you, which enable you to just be.
To
you
be,
know,
yeah,
to
that's
be.
it,
You know,
that's
just do the ordinary things. Just you know,
I
it
think
just keeps you.
there are
just-
things, aren't there, that you can do that's almost, you know those little things that are private and personal that you can just like, you know, just close off from. Hinterland's a good way to describe it, actually.
hinterland.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? Just that it's like you're on your own little axis.
Yeah.
Of, okay, this is, you know,
Is it?
oftentimes for me, you know, I can read something and not finish it.
Yeah.
As long as I just read a bit of something, I get some sucker from that, and
Yeah.
that's that. Okay, and then I'll go on to the next. Now, so there's a bit of like, I don't know if I did a test. I don't know if I'm on the spectrum. Who knows? But I kind of move from, you know, I'm kind of like, you know.
Welcome to the club, bro.
Again, you know, we're in this.
But I'm interested in things. I'm curious.
Yes.
I think it's the curiosity is the thing which again, I think maybe that's from my parents as well. The parent that travelled here. It's weird that I keep going back to that thing, but it's, you know, when I think about my mum, my dad, you know, and people like me, and you know, I dare say you're the same in the. What made them come do this journey? Why?
We were talking
You know.
about that this morning. I think one of the things when I've talked to people, been talking to people who've just recently arrived in Britain and they're young, and a bit which I often overlook, there's a part of what they say, some of them are saying, despite all the economic bits, etc., they're young and they're excited and they're curious.
Yes.
They want to see other things as well, which is what being young's about.
Isn't it?
You know, you want to see and experience other things. I also think it's something which, you know, stays with us throughout our lives.
That's
So
it.
as we get older, you still want to experience and see different things.
Yeah, I
it
think
gives
so.
you something. It gives you, I don't know, it opens your eyes, makes you think differently, makes you feel differently, makes you think differently. I think that's what people, you know, that's for me personally, I like the idea of still having new things.
I'd like to think that you know, it's like adding value to your life.
Yes.
No, it does.
That's a
It
good
really
way to put
does.
That's what it is.
Yes.
You know, and you know, it's the human experience. Again, we touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
That the human experience, it's beautiful.
No, it is.
It's
Definitely is,
beautiful that you know we're wide eyed and you still want to. Although sometimes I do get this. Again, going back to when I was working, when I had a proper job, and when I started to get into music, there was a period when it was just like a hobby for a while, but then something kind of changed when I was around 17, 18, that it felt more than a hobby for me. It's like, oh no, this is, I really like this, you know, and I was writing stuff and I was putting my thoughts down about things, what was going on, and like I said, this was like late 80s now, and my work started to suffer because I was starting to play in bands, and late 80s I was playing in bands and I'd be turning up to work late or not coming in, you know, next day because I'd been out somewhere in a van with a band somewhere, you know, and that's when I kind of thought, wow, I kind of really want to do this. I think I really want to do this. Again, the curiosity thing, and just like there's other things out there. There's other my friends. I always remember, and especially like in Worksop, where in smaller towns, you not so much in big cities like Sheffield, but in smaller towns, I always felt that it's sometimes it's other people especially if you're in a group, a gang or whatever, that don't want you to leave.
Oh, it's true.
It's other people.
Yeah, it's other people.
You know,
yeah.
it's like, you know, what are you doing that for? Why are you doing something different to us? We do this. Why are you, who do you think you are to do something different to what we're doing? What's that you're doing? Music. Why are you doing that for? And that's what happened. Because I was like, no, there's something else.
Yeah.
What else is going on? Who are those people? What's that? You know, and questions. What, why, where, which, when.
But is it possible also that, you know, other people usually use us as a reference to their own movement? Because sometimes I end up realizing with this with my adopted children. You know, like sometimes they have nieces and nephews who are not necessarily your blood. But I remember my borrowed children when they moved off to study elsewhere. And at that time we were thinking of either moving to the States and stuff. And they were like, why are you even thinking of moving? What will happen when we come back to Sheffield? You see what I'm saying? That kind of thing that, you know, I think some people sometimes use us as a...
Well, there's a feeling, it could be a feeling of being left behind.
That's
Whatever
the
left
thing.
behind
No,
might feel like, there is my life. I know what my life might be like.
Yes.
And it's like this, whereas yours is going. And you have left people. You know, if you leave like that, I mean, when people emigrate, they have left something behind. They've made a sort of a judgment about the place they were. You know, it might not be a bad one, but they've decided they want something else as well.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, they're exactly the same thing we were talking about this morning about, you know, like sometimes you feel like you have to apologize. And this happens in our community quite a lot. Like you have to apologize for progressing. Or for
the guilt.
Whatever
guilt
progression
comes.
might be, but it could be doing things differently.
That's it.
Or different in your own perceptions of what you go back to your group. Of your group.
Yeah.
You've got a group of people who you are moving with as such there, and you want to do... I remember when I was 17, 18, and I've said it many times before, I used to like walking. I love walking now. And I used to play cricket. And the guys said, what are you doing tomorrow? I said, I'm going for a walk. I said, what, where? I said, I'm going to Derbyshire. Well, yeah, I'll go to Derbyshire for.
Yeah.
But it was just what I wanted to do. And what I'm really pleased now is that lots of black people from all over the country now are walking. And that fills me with...
I'm a walker.
Yeah, and we look, absolutely. And why
walker.
shouldn't we?
Yeah.
And why shouldn't we, whatever it is there? And I think that feeling sometimes, a feeling that, you can limit yourself to what others think all the time.
That's the thing. It's the boxes that you put in. People put you in boxes. People need to put you in boxes so they can identify you and they can label you. And what I always say, especially in my business, is you're going to be in a box. Someone's going to put you in a box. So for me, the trick is to create your own box before someone else puts you in their box.
Yes.
Put your own box, so you label it, and then as soon as you label it with whatever you're going to label it with, that you're happy with, and then when somebody wants to just about to label you, oh, there's a label already on it. Oh man!
See, Steve, that makes me want to ask you the question, which is, when you came out with the album Northern Black, I always wanted to ask you why that title Northern Black, because it's got it says a lot.
Yeah, it's very. I think it's pretty descriptive. I think for me, so if you fast forward to the 90s, then, and so I've left work. I've got this record. I was with a group called Cloud9, and we got a deal with a label called Acid Jazz.
93.
93. So that was a big, not a big deal, but it was a big deal in terms of like, it was a big thing. I was young. Acid Jazz were like one of the cool labels at that time. That had bands like Jamiroquai that just signed, and Mother Earth Code, all these really cool sort of, and we were part of that. So we were going down to London and playing all these really cool places with like Brand New Heavies and Galliano and all that stuff. So it was a really great scene at that time. And so we did this album called Millennium, and did a couple of tours. But one thing led to another. We ended up, we ended up splitting up, and musical differences, whatever. So in the mid-90s now, I was kind of no band, no job, no money, and all that stuff. And just me and my wife, Lisa. And so I started to just write songs, you know, and just my old thoughts and bits and pieces. And I was thinking about who I was in the context of like being a young black kid in Sheffield trying to get on in the music scene.
So you had moved from Worksop?
Oh yeah, I'd moved in 90, just before the album.
Made the big move to the big city.
90,
the big city.
90,
Yes.
Yeah, the big city.
The big city.
Yeah.
Really smile at that one.
The big city.
The bright lights.
Yeah. The bright lights of Winkelbank. Yeah. And
Great lights of Winkelbank.
sorry, London Road. That's
London Road. Oh, even brighter.
Yeah, even brighter. the grimy lights of London Road.
Yeah.
And so Northern Black, I always thought about I'd have these little categories for myself. Okay, so you're a black artist, you're a young black man, you know, in white England. But not only are that, you're from the north.
Yes.
And I always made a distinction that because when I was going down to London, I got family in London, so I'd always gone to London since I was a kid.
So as far as you're concerned, you're coming from country.
Since I was
and you were literally coming from country.
So literally. So when I got to London, you know, and I started my uncles and you know, and I had a brother that lived in London, down in Harlesden way, and the black experience is completely different. So wow.
Yeah.
This is hardcore. This is,
yeah, it was.
You know, I thought we had it kind of tough, but they were different. Obviously, I thought there was a kinship, but there was the difference as well. The north-south divide is colourblind.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I realised.
It was a very different type of life, wasn't it? But first of all, I always felt with London that my black family in London, first of all, the Caribbean community down there was so much larger.
Yes.
It's so much larger there. And there were so many people as well. And there were so many things that it felt like you could access. Whereas for me, it was a much smaller world I lived in.
Because you could be within a community in a place like London, and just and more often than not exist just within that community.
That's it.
More or less.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's the thing, isn't it?
No, that's true.
Well, I went down to London in 1978 and worked in McVitie's down on Uxbridge Road. And
McVitie's, the biscuit place?
Biscuit place. I did a summer there. And I saw black men, grey-haired black men. I'd never seen grey-haired black men up to that point. The oldest man I knew at the time was my dad. And he wasn't yet 50. So I'm seeing here guys who were into their 60s because the community I knew was a small community in Nottingham. So for you in Worksop, I can imagine it was a version of that.
Kind of. I mean, I had family in Nottingham as well. You know, sort of Carlton Way and Ice and Green and all those kind of places. And but the London thing was very, for me, it was very apparent. And so being in Sheffield, being from the north, I knew that I was kind of proud to be from up north.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like even my accent. You know, don't get me wrong. You know, I can speak Patois as well as anybody because I've always been. My mum always used to say that out of the English family, I'm the most Jamaican one. Yeah. Because I'd slip into Patois really easily, you know, whereas my brother Dave was a bit more. But I have got this broad, as well, this dialect that's like
you're northern,
you know,
that's a northern accent. And when you go down to London, it would be quite pronounced.
Yes, it would be, and it kind of stuck out, and again, you talk about conforming. you think, oh, do I need to conform to trying to fit into this little kind of cabal here, or do I
start to sound like you're a geezer?
Yeah,
ducking and weaving,
diving, But I thought, no, I'm from up north, mate. I'm from Sheffield. Now, and I thought about so Northern Black came from a collection of like of being proud to be not just a black man in England, but a Northern black man in England. Also with my dad and my brother Dave, who worked at the pit as well, because they were both coal miners. I felt about coal, literally like coal. I always think about when we used to get one of the perks of my dad working at pit. Was we'd get like a
big sack of it,
loads of coal back in the old days.
Yeah. What?
They'd come.
Yeah, they did.
So you'd have a cellar. So we had his house and his cellar, and a coal lorry had come, and there was like a door, like a trap.
There was a trap at the front of the house. You open that.
You
and
open it up. There's like a chute down into your cellar.
Yeah. And your cellar was full of coal.
Take coal down into your cellar. And me and my brother would have to go down.
You get sent down to get coal.
David, Stephen, go and get the coal. Oh, God, Dad, all right, all these big pieces of coal, and we were bringing it down. It sounds like sort of like 1875.
But they used to have the coal lorry used to come up your road. And the big sacks of coal, and the coal man would come off there, and he'd open a big sack of coal, and he'd open the trap door, whatever it was, and this went down.
Yeah, and they shoved the coal down.
Yeah.
So it was so that was something. You think of that, we were talking about, let's say 20, 25, 40 years ago was 1985. Yeah. In 1985, or well, this is probably sort of late 70s now, really. If you went back 40 years before that. You're in 1940s.
Yes.
And the things like that had not changed for like 40, 50 years.
Yeah. But that's actually the start of the change is happening at that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're seeing the very back end. Because, again, Worksop, and you've got the miners' strike taking place at that same period there. And I always remember, I don't know about for you, but when you used to play football and cricket, and we used to go out as a black team up to, all these mining villages. You did need to know how to fight.
Yes, you did.
Because there were tough places, weren't they?
They were.
And they were, you would have to fight.
Yeah. You had to stand up for yourself.
You had to stand up for yourself. Even if you were the softest, weakest, whatever there, you weren't playing.
You were, yeah. So as I say, so coal has been like a backdrop in my life growing up in one way or another. Coal, black gold. Do you know what I mean? Which we obviously built Britain on the coalfields, in the steelworks, and those indigenous industries, I suppose, especially in the north. Again, so everything for me, being proud to be from the north, being proud to be a black man from the north, being seeing my dad, working, and my brother working in coal and stuff. So it's just it was imagery.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is the thing I was talking about, I was like in poems and stuff. It's about imagery, isn't it? About trying to, okay, and if you're going to write something, you're trying to tell a story as quickly and as succinctly as you possibly can, so people get it.
And I think what you get from that as well, which I loved about that title, was I think you did in that title sort of like embody a particular type of experience of black communities, outside of the metropolis of London and Birmingham.
That's exactly what it was.
It was about being in Huddersfield, about being in Nottingham, about being in Worksop, about being in those northern towns.
They never got talked about.
We never got talked about.
Not sexy enough.
No, you didn't. They weren't sexy enough. They were not like black communities who were. If you were going to back in the day, if you're talking about on the news and going to do a feature on the black community, emerging black community, you'd go down to London. You might go to Birmingham, but you weren't going to Huddersfield. You were not going to. I mean, to say to people, is there a black community in Newark, in Worksop? Well, yes, I knew of them.
Yeah.
In Rugby, Gloucester. They've always
In Slough.
Slough. There's
In
been
Slough. Cheam. Anyone in Cheam?
Ipswich. All of the black communities, all those places, but they just were not noted.
No.
So there you are growing up, and you're not being noted first because you're black, and then also you're not being noted because you're not part of this larger, well-known community of, I call it Notting Hill. You know, in Nottingham, we used to always get really annoyed because whenever they talked about the race riots of 1958, they always said Notting Hill and never mentioned Nottingham riots, which took place before.
That's the thing.
Which is the thing, because it's not sexy. It's not as, you know.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Nottingham.
Yeah.
What? You know, it's Notting Hills in London. So for me, so the Northern Black thing was when you know, I thought it was a strong word, strong title, Northern Black. Okay, and I also, when I wrote the song, it started as a song, and I wanted to write something autobiographical. That's where it came from.
Yes.
I thought, right, I'm going to write a song about me and about my upbringing, how I got here, how you know what brought me here, who brought me here, and all the circumstances. How can I do that in a 3.5, 4 minute song that's going to try? But also with that, I wanted to show that experience of me and other people like me. But I wanted it to be inclusive as well. I wanted it to be that any community, any culture, white, black, China, any that could read it or sing it or listen to it and think, yeah, that's kind of...
There's a universality about it.
Complete universality about it. That they could just maybe switch a couple of words, but it's like, that's my line. It could be Irish. That's not the Irish that came over. You know, when we're working on roads and you know and building, you know, as construction workers, it could be the Scots, it could be whoever, you know, and so it ticked a lot of boxes. It ticked a lot of boxes of my identity, self of place, who I am, but also where I am. It's geographical, it's a personal thing, you know, and it's all encompassing.
But it also highlights another thing, which is identity isn't a singular. It seems to me as if there's many facets of who we are.
But that's humanity.
That's humanity. Yeah. Sometimes we get it gets lost into a sort of like one.
It's not binary, is it?
It's not binary.
No. People think things are binary.
There's lots of facets to it there, and I think that's what as you describe it. I'm thinking, there are so many different features of the things which contribute to who we are.
I think so. I mean, the song opens with my daddy came ashore about 58. He tried knocking on doors, he couldn't get a break.
Yeah.
You know, and that came from my dad when he's told me that when he first got to work. So he came to the docks, Tilbury docks, wherever he came, went to the labour exchange as they did.
Yeah.
And they got, you know, if they didn't know it, if they knew it, do you know anybody? Where do they live?
Yeah.
Oh, I know someone that lives in Nottingham. Right, we're going to send you there then. You know, and that's how they did it, you know. And so in the 50s he went to Nottingham. And then when he got to Nottingham, said, right, there's a job there. It's a place called such and such pit. It's in the six called work. Go there. Okay.
And that's where, you know, and black men who came to Nottingham first, it was to the pit first.
That's what it was.
Everybody of a generation.
They all went to
the pit first.
Nottingham first.
Yes.
And then they went.
And then
all went to the pit. A lot of the guys couldn't cope with it though.
Yeah.
My dad couldn't cope with it.
Yeah, a lot couldn't cope, but you know, my dad did. Yeah. And he told me that when he first came, he had his grip. You know, not suitcase, a grip.
Yep.
Massive, you know, big suitcase, you know. And it was knocking on these bed and breakfasts. They said vacancies, but there also a sign that said no blacks, no dogs, no Irish.
Yeah.
You know, and it said vacant, and no, he can't stop, no vacant. He couldn't get in. And then a policeman saw him, came up to him, said, what are you doing, sir? He says, I'm trying to, find somewhere to stay for a few days, but no one's letting me in. And this policeman took him to this first guest house that he came across, this next one, knocked on the door, the landlord opened the door, said, right, I want you to put him up. I said, well, I don't have any blacks in it. He says, well, I'm telling you, you know what I mean, you need to put him up because he's walking up and down the street, you know, and he can't, I'm telling you as a policeman, I'm ordering you to, and that's how he got his first bed. And that's how the opening line
is his first break.
You know, my dad, he came to show about 58, tried knocking on doors, he couldn't get a break. He'd never been so cold. He took a walk with God, that's his, obviously covering his religion. He met his Valdolin, who was my mum, Valdolin Martin, as she was then. Took a walk with God, met his Valdolin, started working underground. That's how it all began, his search for gold. It's for the boys, he said, which were us, me and my brother. You know, and that's,
you tell you what, it's beautiful. That,
but that tells the story.
It tells a story. Absolutely, I can have my own story there.
But that's your own story,
and it's a story being told, is being experienced now. You know, with all the new people coming into Britain, then all the difficulties.
It's about immigration.
Absolutely,
it's about, you know, it's mass movement. It's about humanity. It's about family. It's about working class.
Yes.
It ticks all those boxes. You know, you're talking about, you know, someone who works down the pit, someone that's got spirituality, somebody who wants just to find a better work, make a better life for his family. You know, and those things.
And the thing, I mean, it's like, because it's like I was binge listening to some of your stuff, and the collaboration with Bob Sinclar.
Bob Sinclar, yeah.
It's again, it's the theme of it's still like that whole, you know,
it's still
all encompassing.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, there's always a theme, but generally, the kind of things that I tend to write about are that you'll see there's like social commentary.
Yes.
In there.
Yeah.
I always think about, like, one of my favourite artists is John Lennon, and his song Imagine,
yes,
which everybody knows, you know, and it's always cited as, you know, you get these lists of the best song of all time. It's always in the top 10, you know. Imagine, everybody say Imagine there's and everybody loves it, and everybody thinks it's this. You know, we're talking about boxes and labelling boxes, you know. So when you think about that song Imagine, everybody thinks it's this beautiful song, which it is, because it's sung in a beautiful way, but it's actually a protest song.
Yes, it is.
It's a protest song.
Yeah.
And yet kids in schools sing it.
That's it, isn't it?
You know, and because the teachers don't realise what he's actually. They just think it's this.
Nice little sing along.
You know, sing Imagine.
Because it was the Vietnam.
So it's like it's part of the Vietnam things from 1970, 71.
Yeah.
And then what he said when he was asked about Imagine, he said what it was. He says, but you have to sugar the pill.
Yeah.
You have to sugar the pill. You got to make something palatable.
Yes.
So people can eat it or imbibe it or drink it and take it in. And then it gives them the chance to actually sit with it and go, oh, wow, I didn't realise you just said that. You know, and that's where, so writing World Hold On, when I wrote World Hold On, it was a similar thing in terms of, I knew what I wanted to say, you know, because obviously, you know, I've my own, I tend to write songs from my own point of view. I'm not kind of, you know, you get people, different songwriters write in different ways. Some people write about other people and or about you know, or make stuff, you know, like fantasy kind of things up. I kind of write from about me or my views or my. It's from my sort of point of view on things. So it's very so if someone's listened to songs of mine, they'll kind of get what I'm about.
Which basically then means that no one can interpret that any different than Steve Edwards. As much as they can sing along to it.
They can, because I write from my own point of view, but I try and write that people can take from it what they want to take from it.
So maybe,
you know.
So if you were having to, this is maybe a hard one then, is there a track or song you've written which you think, you know, I'm really, really proud of that in terms of being able to say...
It's a Christmas one, yes.
Not the Christmas one.
Because I thought that was
which
awesome.
You could say in terms of encapsulates much of that sense of, you know, I've got something to say and I think it really cuts across many different groups of people.
I would probably say, I think Northern Black's up there. I think that's up there because because like I say, that's a song that anybody from any demographic can take from that and say, that's me, that's my life, that, in my own way, from my parents and my upbringing or whatever. So that's up there. We'll Hold On, of course, is something that, you know, is it's almost like when I was listening to when I wrote that, I was listening to Marvin Gaye, What's Going On.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I looked at that album, and it's always been one of my favourite albums.
Same here as well. Top 3 albums.
It's
Top
just,
3 albums.
Yeah.
You know, and you think about the time when he did that, you know, because Motown was still kind of...
Yeah, it's about 1970, 71, isn't
yeah,
it?
you know, and I always remember the story that Berry Gordy didn't want him to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and Marvin was like, no, I've got this thing. His brother was in Vietnam, and that's what moved him.
Yeah.
That's what he wrote about. What the album, you know, he was taking an interest in the war and things that were going on around him. So he wasn't just talking about Grapevine and all those kind of lovey-dovey kind of songs. And so he, so part of his album was like the ecology, you know, like Mercy, Mercy Me and those kind of songs, like the fish in the sea and oil.
One of the first
poison
environmental songs, wasn't it?
Yeah, you know, it's like so. It's kind of like you know. So people think of Marvin as just so,
like the,
but he was saying
crooner.
stuff. He was saying stuff. Again, it's that thing about people have perceptions of certain. Certain cultures, maybe Bob Marley aside, but I think the outside world look at black artists, or they did, not so much now, but at the time, I always felt that they'd look at a black artist and think, well, you know, if you're not singing about love, you know, and getting down with your baby or whatever, or dancing or something like that, which is fine. But if you were talking about something a bit more, that had a bit more weight, a bit more gravitas about it,
Yeah.
they'd be like, well, what? You know, they kind of didn't want that from you.
So you had the pressure of the box.
Yeah,
being
it was
put in
all
the
right
box.
with Bob Dylan doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can talk about, you know, the answer my friend is blowing in the wind. Yeah, you can talk about that. But if Marvin comes in and says, you know, mother, there's too many of you dying.
Yeah.
Brother, there's far too many of you crying.
Yes.
So, why is he saying, oh, can't you just sing about love, Marvin?
Yeah.
You know, mercy me. Can't you just sing about the fishing, oil in the sea and radiation? What are you talking about that for? You know, but as it turned out, it was one of the greatest albums ever made.
Yeah.
You know, and then talking about the ecology. And so when I did, my thing, so my genre, my channel became like electronic house music.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I got into sort of house music. That was a way forward. Like I say, from the 90s, after I was in the Cloud9 thing, with Acid, and all went, and then I started to write songs. I was going out to clubs. I was, you know, I enjoyed the club scene, you know, and I was kind of with me and my friends and raving, and that was kind of what I started to enjoy. But what I did notice was a lot of those songs were kind of quite hedonistic.
Yeah.
Which is you know, castles in the air and all that kind of sort of, you know, and people would be taking whatever stimulants to be taking.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't possibly comment.
Yeah.
Or could I? But I was part of that thing, you know, and that's fair, you know, and I had great times, you know, but for me, as a young black artist in the 90s, Britpop was a thing. So in Sheffield, it was all kind of indie and you know, guitars and there didn't seem to be much space for an artist like me in Sheffield. I thought, well, what am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? How am I going to, you know? I wasn't 20 anymore, so I had a lot of things going against me. So I remember listening to a lot of electronic music and hearing these singers. You'd hear that a DJ or such and such featuring such and such. Oh, okay. You know, that kind of thing. And I thought, and well, that might be a way, because what you'd get like a DJ producer featuring like an American gospel house singer, Robert Owens, Byron Stingley, Michael Watley, you know, these kind of brothers and sisters, you know, and, you know, to a beat, you know. And I thought, yeah, maybe that's a way. Maybe I could be a featured singer on house tracks, you know, because I'm into the club culture, I understand it. You know, so that's how I kind of got into house music. So that would have been a sort of like late 90s when I started doing my first house music. And the first break I got, you were talking about Nottingham, it was with a guy called Charles Webster, who was from Nottingham. And I used to go across to him. in the studio with him, and we were writing these house music tracks, and we put an act together called Presence, and we did an album. We got it signed to a label called Pagan Records, and the album's called All Systems Gone. Check it out, All Systems Gone on Spotify. It's a fantastic underground deep house album.
Deep house. I love the phrase deep house.
And it's a deep house. Yeah.
Yes, takes you back, doesn't it? Deep house.
And that's kind of how I got into house music. You know, and that's when there's a way forward for me as an artist, and that led me. So Presence, we got a lot of write-ups. You know, people saying, "Yeah, you really, Presence, this new thing," and then I did a festival in Istanbul, and in Istanbul I met some artists like Cassius from Paris, from France, and Basement Jacks from here, and then they were like, "Oh, we love that thing, Steve. Will you come and work on our album?" So I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And you could see things starting to ratchet up.
Yeah.
You know, so things have started to happen to me away from Sheffield. So I was always going away, whether it was Nottingham, whether it was going to Manchester or going to, and that's how. And so eventually, it led me to Bob Sinclar.
Yeah.
This guy who I'd heard of, the French DJ. He got my number, and because I'd done a song with a Swedish guy called Axwell. Have you heard of Swedish House Mafia?
No.
There's a band called Swedish House Mafia, and Axwell's one of them. The big Swedish thing, and we did a song called. I wrote a song for him called "Watch the Sunrise." Great song, it was a big song, and Bob had done a remix for it. And he liked my voice, he liked my song, anyway, Axwell must have given me my number, and he called me, "Hi, it's Bob Sinclar, so I'm doing an album. I'd like you to be on it. I'd like you to write some songs for it." I said, "Okay, cool." And I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" He said, "Well, just write how you write. Just, I like your songs about peace, love, and da-da-da-da." I said, "Okay, cool." So I was at home, I had my guitar. I always tend to write on guitar. So I wrote a few songs. I was due to go to Paris to go and show him these songs. And one of them was World, Hold On. And I just wrote this thing. And going back to the Marvin thing, the reason I brought Marvin up was because I wanted to write something about the ecology, about the world, about the wars, the famine, the whole thing, and try and bring it into like some kind of bite-sized chunk of how I saw, how I felt about certain things at that time. And I think at the time there was something, I think it was the children. There was a lot of children in parts of Africa that always were starving and famine and wars. And my viewpoint was about how the children suffer from all these things that happen. And I felt really strongly about that. I had 2 young kids at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I just, again, bashing along on this guitar in my bedroom, and that could open up your heart. What do you feel? Okay, open up your heart. Okay, what can I say? The Big Bang may be a million years away, but I can't think. It's really simplistic, but I was thinking about when the Earth explodes. So I was thinking about that Big Bang thing. How did the Earth form? The way the Earth formed is going to be the way the Earth will go with the Big Bang. It started with the Big Bang, apparently, and it will go with the Big Bang. Yeah. You know what I mean? Hopefully not for a gazillion years, but the Big Bang may be a million years away, but I can't think of a better time to. And then that just title, this World Hold On. I like that. World Hold On. When I was very specific, I thought, how do I make this again more succinct? I thought, no, it has to be world, hold on. It's like a really small thing, but it was like, it's not world, hold on, it's world, stop, pause, hold on. Instead of messing with our future, open up inside, world, hold on. Because one day you will have to answer to the children of the sky. And I played it him when I got to his studio. He said, "Yes, I like this. This is beautiful. I like it." Amongst other songs, and I recorded the vocal down, just to some beats, and he produced it up with him and his friend, He sent it me back, kind of produced up. And I was like, yes, yeah, that's pretty cool, that. Yeah, I like that. That's all right. I didn't think it was going to be a hit or anything. I thought, yeah, it might be an album track. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I know, somebody from BBC, Radio 1, said, oh, we're going to play your song this weekend. The label said they're going to play, Pete Tong was going to play your song.
And he made it. Pete Tong.
And it all went well. Fortunately, it didn't go Pete Tong. It went Pete Tong for the right reasons. And it just blew up. It blew up. And it changed my life. It literally just kind of just like that. You know, with everything I'd done before, but that was like the one that kind of went kind of properly worldwide really quickly.
Yeah.
And it was like number one around the world.
We're going to have to pick this one up again.
Yeah, I'm aware that
because
oh, is that where have you?
that is a great place to sort of like
for you to pivot, and I'll continue the conversation like after you get ready.
Oh, I want to be back here for. I'm interested. This we've got to 1993. We've got to a point there where this is a seminal point, it seems, in terms of your musical career. And with it as well, there is, for me, all what's become before it, and all many things we talked about your dad, your family, and when we were talking about Northern Black with those opening lines, which I just love those opening lines there, because it encapsulates, as you say, so many people's own experience.
I think so. I think that's what's important for me.
Yeah.
Having the when I think about the exhibition that's at the Western Park.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Oh yeah, because you feature in that exhibition there.
Because they wanted to do it. They said, Steve, will you do a bit? Will you film yourself doing the song?
Yeah.
Because they felt it would.
Yes, it does.
And I think it does. I've had a lot of feedback when people said, "Oh, I saw your song on," when they listen to it and they understand it, it kind of tells the story that all these photographs and everything that's in that exhibition are telling that story, and that's just in a song version of all those people. My daughter's on there, Matilda.
Yes, that's how you're
it is. You're right. I think Caribbean Footsteps there, and the song there definitely captures what Caribbean Footsteps is all about.
I think so.
And that's another plug there for people there. If you haven't been up to Caribbean Footsteps,
how good is
at
that?
Western Park, make sure you go there. And if you've been once or twice, go a third and a fourth time, because it's an absolutely fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Exhibition.
There's things that you'll see, and then you have to go again.
Yes.
To say, I didn't see that. Yes. And then you go again. I mean, one of the things I saw the third time I went, this freaked me out. So I took my brother.
Yeah.
Who still lives in Worksop, our Dave, and he came with his wife. And there's a photograph which I didn't see, I missed it. There's a photograph, and there's bits and pieces from us. My dad's passport. There's a couple of paintings of my eldest, Don Jemima, one of the big one. It was my aunt, and self-portrait of her, and one of the things on there is a photograph of the ship. If you've seen the boat, the Ascania, and the Ascania, and it said 1950, and I had to do a double take, and the Ascania in 1950, that date, I've worked it out, is the ship that my mum came on. Because she always told me, I said, how did you come here, Mum? Because I came on the ship called the Ascania. So, okay, in the 50s, just left it at that, and then it said 1958, 57, what it was. And that's the ship, docking. Yeah. And I was like, she's on that ship there now.
I'm going to be there again. So I have to depart, but... Great talking to you,
Derek,
Steve.
fantastic.
Donald, keep going.
You do.
Derek, Who's Derek? Yes. He's giving me a new name.
It's like Only Fools and Horses.
Only Fools and Horses there. Hey, but I can't remember people's names. You know them for years. You think, what's his name? Steve, it's been brilliant talking to you there. And we must do it again, because there's so much to talk about. And that's one of the beauties I find of the people we've been talking talking to over the past year. I don't know what you want to say about that to Lungani.
I was going to say, you know, I'm going to stick around with Steve, you know, like for another 15 minutes and just chopping at.
Chop it up. He loves seeing it. Mike, chop it up, you know.
Yeah, man.
Chop it up.
Yeah.
So bye for now.
You just chop it up.
Yeah.
Just chop it up, man.
Respect,
You
Respect
know what I mean?
Yes.
And just chop it up.
Thanks, Dano.
Dano.
I had an uncle Don actually. You know what I mean? Uncle Don.
Yeah. Oh man. Actually, to be honest, it's a natural break from that, and then we'll just kind of
start trying to do it UDI now.
come on, give me a break, man.
He's engineering me out.
I am not, bro. I will never engineer you out of this thing, man. You know, let me tell you, I have been trying so hard to kind of convince this gentleman because he's been telling me he wants to live in a year. I'm like, no, we can't leave this thing because it's like I'm trying to coerce him to kind of change his mind.
What are you living for, Don?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
No, that's another story. That other one.
Okay.
But in terms of the podcast, there, it's not yet the Lungani show.
Oh yeah.
You've been in bands,
no.
now it works.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Musical differences.
Maybe musical differences.
That's a good name for the show, isn't it?
They were good as a duo.
They were good, but
Even better.
Oh,
they call it creative differences.
the band's breaking up.
Maybe creative. Say we knew it when he brought in Steve Edwards. That was the beginning of something else, man.
It starts off as the two of us. Lungani featuring.
Yeah. A bit featuring goes, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then there's nothing else, you know, like
Classic.
like.
Oh, Christ, almighty.
Thanks a lot, bro.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.
Ah, man.
That's
Never miss
quality.
an episode.
Bro,
Nice one,
Until
Don.
next time.
Nice one. That's brilliant.
Keep those conversations going. And the treat was
say
positive.
featuring. Say he's been featuring all along.
Oh, I did it.